Opening day Friday. Just what's the excitement level at for baseball season to be back?
Man, I think it's really, really exciting. I kind of was thinking last night of some parallels. I think that the baseball team could potentially be a parallel to Georgia's football team last year. We had that, they were really close to winning the national championship against Alabama, and then Tua threw that touchdown. We were really close to the national championship. Pop fly happened. It seems like everybody is just kind of in sync with, the one goal is to win a national championship, and they definitely have the talent. It's just a matter if they're a good team and they're able to win together. And, they had a lot of wins last year and the core is coming back. So very, very excited for that. And opening days is such a magical place at Baum Stadium. So I'm just really, really excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that it's already here, for one, just to think about how it ended last year. And I don't think that there's anybody that will say that last year was success. I mean, the regular season was great, but when you go home that early, there's a lot of frustrations when you're the number one team in the country for as long as they were. You win every SEC series, you win the SEC tournament. I mean, it seemed like everything was coming together. And then for you not even to make it to Omaha, it's got to leave a very bitter taste in the mouth of players, coaches, and everybody. So I just think that this year is going to be interesting to see how they bounce back and how they, try to not get revenge, but just make up for what could have been, what should have been last year too. So the schedule's tough. We know that in the SEC it always is, but the fact is that you got a lot of those big series at home. We know that they've already won the SEC tournament. We've seen what they're capable of from last year too. I think this year that's going to be something that they come out swinging and they come out firing at the very beginning. I think that not only will this team get to Omaha, but they'll make a really good run in Omaha as well.
Yeah, I think that John's comments right there kind of highlight kind of where this program is that any season that doesn't end in Omaha is almost viewed as a failure. But I think Carson could tell you it's not easy to get to Omaha. And I think that's sometimes lost on fans, but that just is it's like Carson was saying, Georgia football, like they had the expectations of, hey, we've been really, really good. We want to get the taste of a national championship. And I think that's kind of where Arkansas baseball fans are, is that, hey, we've been to Omaha. We've been on the precipice of doing something great. And it ends in heartbreaking fashion. Like we want to get that taste. We want to experience what Mississippi State experienced last year, and what Georgia football experienced and things like that. And I think opening day kind of brings those hopes and dreams and everybody, I mean, nobody's lost yet. And so I think that's kind of the great thing about opening day, is that anything is possible. And when you're a program like Arkansas that has so many talented players, I think the possibilities are truly endless. I mean, you could, have a tremendous season that comes up short, like what we saw last year, or you could have a really good season that you make it back to Omaha. And once you're in Omaha, anything can happen.
Y'all kind of touched on last year. And obviously, that's an all-time great regular season that, like John said, still feels a little bittersweet because of how it ended. I mean, Carson, you've been in that clubhouse with Coach Van Horn, obviously, multiple times after seasons that came just close to being super special and didn't. How does he handle the talk of last year? Is he a move on kind of guy? Does he bring up the lessons you can learn? How does he handle that?
Yeah, definitely, is just really transparent about the season. And he's really, really good about that, about being honest, and how he felt the season went. But yeah, he's really into moving on. I've had, I guess, 4 off seasons if you include my my freshman redshirt year. And each time, you know, he just came out and said, you know, great season or tough season, and let's move on, let's get better, and you know, let's figure out a plan for each individual, and try to figure out our goals and figure out how we're going to be able to obtain those goals. So, yeah.
Obviously, you can't talk about last year without saying Kevin Kops's name.
Yeah.
The man put together something that I don't know if we'll ever really see again at that level. I'll start with you, Hutch. How do you even begin to replace what he did?
Well, I don't think you're going to have one guy replace what he did. I think that was the beauty of Kevin Kopps, is that he really had like 3 or 4 roles rolled into one, because he could be his own setup man, the closer, and then do it again the next day. And even against NC State in the Super Regional, he proved that he could be a really good starter. So you're not going to get a guy that is like that. I don't know. You said it. I don't think we're ever going to see a guy quite like that again. And so it's just going to be multiple guys kind of stepping up, figuring out those roles. Dave Van Horn has talked about that quite a bit, these last few weeks leading up to the season. Like these non-conference games are going to be just absolutely vital in figuring out, okay, who can be a starter, who can be a middle reliever, who can be your closer, kind of figuring out those roles on the pitching staff. And I think once they get those figured out, then we'll kind of start seeing, okay, who's going to be the Kevin Kopps. And people forget Kevin Kopps wasn't really Kevin Kopps until a week or two into SEC play. And we might see that. There may be guys that we don't really see early on that end up playing massive roles down the stretch. And that's going to be the kind of the most intriguing thing for me to follow as we progress through the season, is kind of how they fill those roles on the pitching staff.
Going along with that note, and I'll let John start with this one. Starting rotation obviously takes a huge blow when your expected Friday night guy, you lose him before the season even starts. Is there anyone who's ready to step into that role fully? Is it the Connor Nolan show on Friday, or how do you see the starting rotation kind of working out?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I actually got a chance to talk with Bobby Werniss a little bit earlier today, and that was one of the things that he made sure to bring up, is just the how good that Connor Nolan is looking right now. And he loves the confidence that he's throwing with. And he kind of made it sound like that they're going to kind of put their faith in him to be that Friday night guy. But as we know with Razorback baseball, Hutch talked about how, we didn't really know about Kevin Kopps. Like even the coaching staff, because that's another thing Bobby brought up. He's like, we didn't know about Kevin Kopps until we really started seeing him get into the game and doing what he was doing. So that's the thing I always have found so fascinating, especially about Razorback baseball and just watching it, is that, what you start with at the beginning of the year in that opening series, at the end of the year, it may be completely different. Like you may have guys that you went with at the start of the year that aren't even getting on. I think it's going to be a lot of things are going to be changing up. I'm hoping that Connor Nolan can kind of finally bust through, because we've been talking about him forever, to finally get to that point. About like maybe do this year. Is he the TJ Hammonds? Is he the KK Robinson? Can it finally be where now everyone stopped talking about him? He can finally move forward. Maybe they can be the guy that they can actually see how good he is once he gets on the mound. So I think Connor Nolan's going to be a big factor this year. At least I'm hoping so, because he's got all the tools and he's healthy right now.
He used to play football. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed that or talked about that. Strong guy. Carson, just they kind of mentioned it. That's kind of been the MO for the last few seasons as far as the pitching staff goes, is you've got, maybe Friday, maybe Saturday lockdown, but then beyond that, just kind of throwing a bunch of arms out there in the first couple months of the season leading up to SEC play. Is that, how effective has that been? Is that something that can kind of be replicated, do you think, this year?
Yeah, every year, before the season starts, one of the big lessons that's preached to you as a player is, it just takes time to find your role. And once you find it and once you know what it is, you got to accept it. And, that's just obviously what happens when stuff like that happens, and just to speak on Connor Nolan, I've heard some really good things as well this year. One thing has been a constant is he's always had it right here. He may, have gotten hurt or may have not, been as talented as his predecessors and things like that, but he's always had it right here. And that's what really sticks out to me. And I've heard that he's developed a good cutter slider pitch this year, similar to Kopps. It's obviously not going to be like Kopps's from last year, but I think that's, keeping people off his fastball in the fall, that cutter, and he's just still got it right here. And that's really the most important thing as a Friday guy. You just got to have a guy that's, talented enough, but he's going to bully people. And I think that Connor has that ability to do that. So.
On the other side of things, there's not so many question marks about the offense other than, how is Dave even going to play this many guys? Hutch, I was just reading your article about the bench. I think. I mean, how do you start finding at bats when you've got a roster this deep?
Well, I'm definitely not jealous of Dave Van Horn having to fill out his lineup card this weekend because he's got so many options. I mean, I think he said that he's got as many as 12 guys he views as starters, and you've obviously only got 9 spots. So he's going to have to figure it out. And I mean, the guys are going to kind of help him figure it out. I mean, there's going to be guys that maybe get off to a slow start, and then it opens a door for someone else. And, guys get hurt. The injuries are part of the game. So I think it'll all eventually work out. But the good news is that you've got so much depth that if you do have an injury, like obviously you wouldn't want to see like Jalen Battles go down or something like that. But if it does happen, well, guess what? You can slide Robert Moore over as short, move Peyton Stovall over to second, and put someone else in at first base, and you'll get it figured out. Like there's pieces, and you can move guys around and make it work. And I think that's the good thing about this team. There's just so much depth. Maybe we could see guys, platoon based on, who's the opposing starting pitcher. Is it a lefty or a righty? You could see maybe even some more rotation at catcher. Like, I mean, Casey Opitz caught like 80% of the games the last 3 years. And before that, Grant Cook, I think, caught like 90% of the games. And that's tough on a catcher. And you want those guys. I mean, those guys were fantastic, and you want those guys out there. But if you can afford to start, somebody else, say Michael Turner's your starter, if you can start Dylan Leach, on the midweeks, or you can start him, once on a weekend or something like that, then it keeps everybody fresh, and maybe that would, benefit you down the line. So I do think that depth is going to be kind of one of the strengths of this Arkansas baseball team.
Yeah, Carson, you could just touch on the depth of the lineup and just what it means to have so many pieces to play with.
Yeah, the one thing that sticks out to me about what Andrew said, in my opinion, utility is a lost art in baseball. People are way too specialized on just one position. And, I kind of look up and down the lineup, and I feel like everybody can play, pretty much everything. So even if, say, one guy goes down, you can slide a guy that's already in the lineup over to third base or to center field or anything like that. And, I think we can just keep on rolling. So I feel like there's a utility aspect to this lineup, and that's going to help out Coach Van Horn and making his decisions and making it a lot easier because, he doesn't have to just plug and play. If one guy's going down, he can slide someone else in and move someone to a different spot. But yeah, I think that, like you were saying, I think the defensive lineup is going to be very, very strong, and there's going to be great options on the bench that are going to be just as good defensively or better. So it's going to be a really good year. I have a feeling that we're going to put, all three together and not just have a great hitting team and we lack in defending. I think we'll have hitting, fielding, and pitching all this year. So
shocking to hear Carson Shaddy talk about utility players and guys able to move around is something important, really. John, someone specifically wanted to talk about Peyton Stovall. I mean, he's a kid who you don't usually get guys like that on campus, and it was kind of was one of the happier surprises of the draft for Arkansas. What does he bring just as a freshman?
Well, I remember when I was actually down at SEC Media Days this past year for football, and I was talking to Matt Moscona, who is of ESPN 104.5 out of Baton Rouge, and some other Louisiana guys too. And, we talk obviously football, but when we started going into baseball, and he said, or I brought up to him about Peyton Stovall, his face just changed. He's like, I don't understand how that kid is at Arkansas right now. And not to say that about him being at LSU or anything. He's like, how is he not in the pros? And we know he's from Louisiana, obviously, but he even mentioned the fact that from guys he's talked to and guys who know high school baseball and have covered baseball for a long time, he says that when talking to them, he's the best prospect to ever come out of the state of Louisiana. Like, when I hear stuff like that, the expectation just gets elevated. And I was able to have him on my radio show once he decided to come to Arkansas, and just talking to him, like, this guy's a rock star. Like, this guy just, like, I doesn't even sound like I'm talking to a freshman or even an incoming freshman at that time. He just has an element to his game where, yeah, what he does on the field is great, but you can just talk about what's up here, kind of what Carson was talking about with the pitching. He's just got it up there where you can just tell he understands the game. He lets it come to him. And from what I've been hearing too, with a guy that has that much accolade and that much talked about and attention paid to him, you think that he may want to come into Dave Van Horn's program and be like, all right, well, I'm Peyton Stovall. I'm going to be given all these things. And from what I hear, he's not doing that at all. He's almost been approaching the baseball program as a walk-on, where he's trying to earn everything that he gets. And like we talked about with the infield and the amount of players that are in there and how great it is, I think he's also understanding that, hey, this is a very crowded room. I got to find my playing time out there as well. So I expect huge things out of him from what I've been hearing and from what I've been seeing and reading about when it comes to scrimmages and practices and all those things. And seeing that he's freshman of the year preseason in the SEC, which is a huge, huge deal. I think the expectation is extremely high for him to be big time in his freshman year. And honestly, I think he's okay with that. I think he embraces that expectation with the type of confidence that he has in himself. So I can't wait to see him get going. And the fact that Arkansas has him for 3 years, that's dumb. Like, that's stupid that they get to have him for 3 years to watch this guy play. I can't wait to see, because the ceiling there is no ceiling for this kid. Like, he's going to be incredible for Arkansas. And I think he'll even start as early as this year.
Sorry, trying to get rid of some background noise, but yeah, John hit on a bunch of it there. But Carson, can you speak? When it comes to Peyton and just in general, what it takes to come in as a freshman to a program like Arkansas and still have the ability to make an impact.
Yeah, first I just wanted to add 2 things before I answer that question. Kind of piggybacking on John, I had heard some stuff from some people inside the program that some scouts were saying that he was the best left-handed bat in the draft in all the Southeast region in college and high school. And for us to get that guy is just huge, and it's huge. And I can also speak on the fact that I think that he's a really good kid. I selfishly DM'd him on Instagram, just congratulating him on his decision. And I just wanted him to help out and just say, hey, I really think you made a really good decision. And nowadays in college sports, there's nothing bad about going and spending your time in college and, growing up and learning all these things. And, we talked for a little bit, and, I was really impressed with how humble he was. He didn't have that top 50 type attitude of a player, you know what I'm saying? But then, just to speak on what you were saying, for him to come in and be impactful, he's got to do one thing, and he's got to not worry about stats. He's got to do what it takes to win games, like in his role. So if his role is getting on base, he needs to crowd the plate, get hit, take walks, all that good stuff. As a freshman, you can't come in and expect yourself to carry the team. Sometimes it works like that. But you can't come in and do that, because there's people that have been in that spot for multiple years and have more experience. And it's really hard in SEC. So, he's got to do whatever it takes to fill his role and get on base and, play good defensively and get some timely hits here. Not try to do too much in big moments. All the good stuff that you preach in baseball. He's got to make sure to do that for sure.
It says everything about this roster this year that we've gotten this far, and all the names that we haven't mentioned. So I want to talk about the guys on the Golden Spikes preseason list as of yesterday. That Caden Wallace and Robert Moore. Hush, you could just start. What should we expect from those two this year?
Yeah, those guys are both tremendous players. I know Robert Moore probably gets the national headlines because he's probably more of a known commodity. I think he's in his going into his junior year. But let me tell you, Caden Wallace is incredible, especially in these scrimmages that have been open to the public. I think he went in 4 scrimmages. I think he went like 7 for 10 with 2 doubles and 3 home runs. Just something stupid. He was incredible, just crushing the ball. And plus, he's making the move. He was a corner outfielder last year, just kind of out of necessity, kind of where they slotted him in. But now he's shifted back to his natural position of third base. And I think he's going to be a really good defensive third baseman. Everyone knows how good of a defender Jacob Nesbitt was last year. And I think Caden Wallace is every bit as good with the glove as Nesbitt was. And so, you're not going to have any drop off there. Plus, he can really hit the ball. And I know his batting average, I think, ended up at like 279 last year. But if you look at what he did in SEC play, he hit up around like 330. I mean, that's like stuff that Heston Kjerstad and Casey Martin did back in 2018. It was a tremendous freshman year for him. And I think he's just going to continue building off of that. And then as for Robert Moore, I think he's going to do what Robert Moore does. I mean, he's going to play really good second base. He's really good up the middle with Jalen Bowles. That double play combo is fantastic. And he's also going to hit the ball. I think he had, 16 home runs last year. I fully expect him to do that again this year. And I would not surprise me to see his batting average take an uptick this year as well. You know, this is his draft year, and I think he's projected as to go as high as, top 10 picks. And when you get a guy like that just kind of shows you how good he is. I fully expect those guys to really live up to the hype. And, with Caden Wallace being a draft eligible sophomore, assuming the MLB draft stays where it's scheduled, Arkansas could have a couple of first round picks, especially if you throw Peyton Paulette in there. It could be a really special year for Arkansas players in the MLB draft.
It's crazy to think about Robert Moore being drafted, because I could have sworn that he was still like 15, but based on all the chatter. You touched on earlier, I mean, just the consistency that Arkansas has had at catcher, going Grant Cook, Casey Opitz, and just the importance of that position. Now it's kind of a little bit of a question mark. I mean, obviously you got transfers coming in, and then Dylan Leach coming up. And John, if you want to start with that one, just how important is it that Michael Turner, Dylan Leach, those guys kind of fill that massive hole that Casey Opitz brought? I mean, not just on the field, but off it.
Yeah, because that's the thing, like when Andrew brought up of all the guys that have been catching for Arkansas and the percentages and the amount that they've played, like it's almost like you take it for granted as a Razorback fan, because it's like you just know that you're automatically going to have a catcher that's perfectly capable, that you don't have to worry about. But it's such an important position. And, obviously the pitching has been really great for Arkansas, and there's been some really great players, Kevin Comps being one of them. But it just always made me wonder, how great would those pitchers have been if they didn't have a catcher like a Casey Opitz, like somebody to be able to count on every single time. And, the whole thing of don't run on Opitz, when he was able to toss it to second base and to get outs that way too. It's just something you take for granted. And I think that those guys, with, whatever that they're going to end up doing and who they're going to figure out who's going to play at that position, that's something that I think that it's kind of paved the way where Arkansas understands what they need out of a catcher. I think Dave Van Horn knows, hey, this is what I need out of these guys. This is what they need to be able to bring every single game, every single time that they go out there. This is what they got to do. And I think that because he's such a great developer of talent and scout of talent and everything, he's probably made sure that he has guys that are perfectly capable of stepping into those roles and taking over after Casey Opitz, because he's like, I'm not going to have somebody that needs to learn on the job. We can't afford that. We're not that type of program. That can step right in, right. So I think what's going to be the case is that who you roll out there at the beginning of the year, and you're probably going to stick with that person. I trust Dave Van Horn, man, to where he knows what he's doing, and he knows that what he needs out of a catcher. So I expect them to, whoever they roll with, it's going to be just fine.
Carson, you can feel free to touch on any of that too, but I wanted to ask you just defensively, what does it do for you having Battles and Bob Moore up the middle?
Yeah, I'd love to say something about the catchers real quick. So, in my opinion, and I think a lot of, probably the coaches' opinions too, across the country, from high school to college, that what they call that jump, the hardest jump is for a high school catcher to be able to play right away and on the college level, and especially SEC level, as hard as guys are throwing nowadays. So that being said, I do expect Dylan Leach to make a jump. It's a year under his belt. He got to play a pretty good amount last year for a freshman. So, I definitely expect him to make a pretty good jump. And then I have heard some good reports on Michael Turner as well. So, I think we'll be fine on the catcher deal. I think it's going to be more of a kind of a platoon type deal, like how it was for me, Tucker, Pennell, and Alex Gosser. Rather than just one guy. I think it's going to be more of a two catcher system, and maybe even three catcher. I'm not for sure. I don't know for sure, but potentially. So, and then just to answer your question about, up the middle, I think that's a key component of teams that go really far in the year. is guys that have experience. They can field really well. Both those guys up the middle, they have a good relationship. They're turning double plays, getting double play opportunities when they can. They both can hit. That's really important to have on your team because, obviously, most of the plays happen up the middle. Shortstop gets the most balls at anybody on the field. So it's extremely important for those two guys to, be great leaders this year, be great teammates and kind of drive the success for the 2022 program.
Something I wasn't even thinking about till I did a radio spot before this, and they asked me, so like, Coach Van Horn getting up there a little bit. You think he starts thinking about retirement? And that was just, I was like, I never even thought at all about that with Dave. I mean, anyone feel free to jump in on that. What do you think it takes for him to hang him up?
Well, I remember, I think it was maybe 2019 when Arkansas was back in Omaha, and it was Mike Martin, I believe, is the Florida State coach. Is that his name? Yeah, Mike Martin. When Mike Martin was at Florida State, it was his last go around. He was retiring, and it got brought up with Dave, and he was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to coach to whatever age he was. And, we're 3 years later, and Dave, every time I hear him asked about it, he's always like, well, I feel good. I love going to the park every day. And I'm like, man, you're not, I mean, he's still got a little bit, but he's not too far away from Coach Martin. And it would not surprise me if he's like that, as long as he's feeling good and still enjoys going to the ballpark. I mean, he's got this program rolling. I mean, with recruiting and the facilities they have now, I mean, I could easily see him coaching. I mean, I don't really think this end is in sight personally. But I mean, I know Carson probably knows Dave Van Horn a little bit better than I do. Maybe he has a little bit more insight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really like an accolade or anything that he's going to hang it up. If it happens, obviously the national championship is the accolade that he's looking for. I don't think that, if he wins one this year or wins one the next year, I don't think he's done. I think he's going to come back for more. And the reason I say that is because that guy's got one of the toughest edges that I've ever seen in a coach or player. And, I don't think he's going to lose that edge for the next 15 years or so, 10 to 15 years at least. He's in great shape, and, he gets the ballpark early and gets his mile runs in, and, he's still kicking and he's still got that edge. And I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. So I don't think we need to have that conversation just yet.
Well, and it's funny too, because I always felt like with Dave Van Horn and just his personality, I think it's almost like if you want to compare it to like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, he's like basically saying, I'll stop playing when I start sucking. And I think that with what Dave Van Horn does is that as long as he's putting together programs and teams that are top 10, top 5, recruiting at the level that they're recruiting at, and he's still getting it done on the field, like I think that he's just, as long as he keeps having that and being able to do that, he's going to stick around for as long as humanly possible. And, I don't think that it's like Carson was saying, I don't think it's necessarily, once he gets to the College World Series and wins that top, that it's just, why would you want to walk away, or why would you want to leave this when you're sitting there on top? So I think that he's going to be around for quite a long time. He's only 61 years old. He's got plenty of time.
You guys obviously all in-state Arkansas natives. Now that we're at the point a few years in and playing the in-state schools, we've got the most extensive in-state schedule. Yeah, I want to say it's 8 games against 4 different in-state schools. Obviously, they're coming down here to Central Arkansas again. Just what does that do? Not just for the Razorback program, but just for baseball in the state of Arkansas, getting to play the Razorbacks. What does that do for everyone else? John, you want to start with that one?
I mean, I think it's just great because, sometimes where we get so wrapped up in like football and basketball, and rightfully so. I mean, this is like football. It's never really had the whole plethora of high level talent coming out. I think everybody understands that. But, on occasion, you'll get those players. But in basketball, it's always been really great. You've had great basketball talent, men's and women's. Sometimes I feel like here in the state of Arkansas, we don't talk enough about how much great talent comes out of this state in baseball. I feel like if you're in the Benton Bryant area, it's like somebody's going to get produced out of there that's going to be like an incredible pitcher. Like, it just seems like that's the case. So I think that because it's always been catered always to going to Arkansas and all that stuff, that's been something. But to be able to have it to where you're playing other in-state schools and making the state care more about college baseball, where, hey, if they don't have a spot for a kid at Arkansas, there's other programs that they can go to here in the state. There's other ways that they can find success. I think that it helps those programs too that are trying to get up and going. Like I remember, I guess last year with UAPB, they're a program that just doesn't have a lot of amenities, doesn't have a lot of support, but playing Arkansas helps them with that and helps build that. So I think that I'm not a huge fan of playing in-state schools necessarily in football. Basketball, I'm fine with it, but baseball, I think it's a great thing to just help out not only Arkansas and having more games of playing in state and help out the fans for seeing more of those games, but also helping out a lot of these baseball programs in the state that need the help and need the support, need the financial, benefits that can build them into a program as well.
Yeah, Carson, if you just kind of take that one too, just playing in state schools and just what that means to the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, I think it's really good for, the South Central areas like Little Rock and, all those surrounding cities as well. Bringing them that great venue, bringing the game to that great venue in Dickey Stevens. And I just think it's good for the whole state of just spreading the awareness of how awesome the Arkansas baseball team is right now. And then as far as, just like John was saying, as far as other schools, being able to play us, they get a big paycheck, and it's very helpful for them. It makes you feel good that we got, you get to help them out in any way possible. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's Arkansas versus everyone. And that's, in my opinion, that includes a bunch of other schools and things like that too. So I always like playing the in-states. You get to play against some guys that you played against in high school, which was always cool and things like that. So I always enjoyed it.
Have you got to see the new facilities yet?
Yes, I have. They're incredible. I was joking around with one of my buddies. It's the second time that the year or two after I left, the program made upgrades to the facility. So I haven't got to enjoy it yet, but I can't believe that a college baseball team has that. It's just downright stupid. From everything, from just really the care that they've gotten now is just so much better. It's unbelievable. I'm lost for words. It's amazing. So
obviously we've hit on a lot of names. There's a lot more that we haven't talked about, but I wanted from each of you, just maybe one guy off the radar a little bit who you think could make some noise this year. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think Braden Webb, assuming he can stay healthy, could be in for a big year for Arkansas. And that's a kind of a guy that I identified immediately after the season. I was like, it would not surprise me if he had, again, we're never going to see another Kevin Kopps-like turnaround, but Kevin Kopps went from just terrible during the COVID shortened season to being the most dominant pitcher we've ever seen in college baseball. I don't know if we're going to see quite that big of a jump, but I could easily see Braden Webb being a guy like that. I could see him having an all SEC caliber year. He's got all the power in the world. He hit under 200, but he still had a ton of home runs. His slugging percentage was still really high because of those extra base hits. And if he could just hit for a higher average, like if he could hit 250, you're looking at a guy that could easily be an all SEC caliber guy. Plus, I think his defense is underrated. Assuming he stays healthy, I could see him being a center fielder and being the guy that he's not going to be a Christian Franklin or a Dominic Fletcher. I think we got a little bit spoiled with those guys, but I think he could easily be a guy that plays a really good center field, throwing what he can do at the plate. I think he's a guy we're going to be talking about, throughout the season is like, oh, wow, this guy came out of nowhere. He had, by all accounts, had a really good fall and a little bit slow by a quad injury, I think it was, but assuming that's good, he could be primed for a breakout year for Arkansas.
Carson, just a guy maybe under the radar, maybe who you think could have a good year.
Yeah, I think it's Zach Gregory. I think that since we saw him be voted captain, I think that's a huge sign of what his teammates think of him. He's had to fight and scratch and claw for playing time his career here. And he's just a guy that, I love to watch because he just will do anything to help the team. And he's not the super big flashy guy. He'll pop a few home runs and, hopefully he can hit 280, 290 this year. But, I just think that his on base percentage, that if he continues to have his on base percentage that he's had in his career, that is going to be one of the biggest reasons why this team goes so far. With all the power that we have that they say we have, if he can get on base at a high percentage and, if he can have those gritty, nasty grinder at bats just to wear down pitchers, I think he's a huge key to this team's success. And he's just a guy who deserves it. He's a great kid. And, I believe in him, and I hope that he gets his chance this year. I think he deserves it. So
I hopefully didn't take it anyone you were going to say.
Yeah, I was thinking about I was like, man, they took all the good ones. So, but that's okay. Because I got one that's I can't really explain why I'm excited about watching, but there was just something he did last year where I got to see him pitch, and there's just, I don't know, I want to see more of it, and that's Heston Toll. Like, he was a guy that last year, I just love the way he pitched. Like, it's not necessarily that he did just one good thing or was great at one thing or anything. It's just when you see some of the great pitchers that have come through Arkansas, he just seems to kind of have some similarities there. And so I know that Arkansas and the pitching staff, like, we know that, listen, defense is going to be great. Hitting is going to be great. Like, we know all those things are going to be great, and pitching has potential to be great. But we're still trying to figure out exactly what this rotation, what the bullpen's going to look like, who's going to be closing, like all those things. And I think Heston Toll is just one of those guys that could really make some strides this year. And will he be a starter? I don't know. But coming out of the bullpen, providing some really good innings, maybe even get to that closer role, I'd really like to see that. So I don't know. He was somebody I really liked last year, and I can't wait to see how he's developed this offseason and see if he can really build upon that from last year too.
All right, we could do this all day, but I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. So we'll just close with expectations. I mean, is this an Omaha or bust team? Is this a team that we think if they're not hosting a super, something's gone wrong? Are they just trying to make it to supers? Just what are your overall expectations for this year's, the 100th year Razorback baseball? How are they celebrating the centennial? John, I'll let you start.
College World Series national championship, for sure. Easy. I mean, listen, I say that tongue in cheek, but I actually do believe that this team has what it takes. And I know that we could say that about a lot of different years and different teams, but they have it all. Like, they have the makings for it. And yes, Peyton Paulette being out is definitely something that is going to have to be considered when it comes to that expectation. But this team needs to make it to Omaha. Like, they got to. Now, do they need to win the SEC like they did last year? Don't have to. They don't have to win the SEC tournament. Mississippi State didn't do that last year, and look what happened to them. But this team needs to make it back to Omaha. I think that's the expectation. They don't even have to win it all. I think they're capable of it. It'd be great. I think we'd all appreciate it. But getting to Omaha definitely has to be the goal, because you don't want to have a year like you did last year where everything was going well and then your season came short. Like, everyone remembers just how terrible the feeling. I want to say Omaha, I think everyone will consider it a successful year.
All right, Carson, on to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with John. I think that it's for sure an Omaha team. Me personally, I never really cared about the SEC championships because we always, our goal was Omaha. That was the big deal for us, and not to mention, there's a lot of good perks of getting out of the SEC championship early if you've done well in the regular season. There's a lot of great perks. I mean, you get to rest pitchers. You don't have to get, Brady Slavens doesn't happen last year, him getting hurt if that happens. So, just for the fans, if we don't win the SEC championship, just that's okay. Let's move on. Let's get past our regional. Let's get past our super regional and get to Omaha. I definitely think that this is a team that, has the chance to win it all. It resembles 18 in a lot of ways, is the fact that, great hitting team, good starters, good bullpen. But I think that, from what I'm hearing, the pitching staff is really elevated under Coach Hobbs, and And I'm just really excited to get Razorback baseball back and see all the new guys and see how we handle expectations, because there's going to be a big target on our back for sure this year.
Yeah, so I would say the last time I felt really, really good about an Arkansas team where I was like, okay, this team is destined to make it to Omaha and could be special, is that 2018 that Carson was a part of, that was, made it all the way to the College World Series finals. I just, even during the preseason, you felt like, okay, this team is destined. I get similar vibes from this team. I'm not quite ready to say I feel the exact same way about the 22 teams I did the 18 team. I feel like the 18 team probably had more proven pitching pitching pieces, but this team might have more just raw talent as far as the pitching staff is concerned. We just don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, is Jackson Wiggins gonna make that huge leap? Is Hagen Smith going to be able to come in and be that guy as a true freshman? There's arms up and down the pitching staff. I mean, Mark Adamiak is a guy that could easily be that guy that surprises us, because, I mean, that's a guy most people probably has never even heard of. And he's Dave Van Horn said he's up to 99. I mean, it's just so much arm talent. It's just unproven. And if they can get that figured out during these early weeks, then I think it's definitely a team that is going to make it to Omaha and could do some damage once they're there. But it's just the figuring out that pitching staff. I think this team's going to hit with anybody, just like the 18 team, just like 19, just like 21. They can hit with anybody. Can they get the pitching staff figured out where it's on that same level as those guys? That's the $1 million question for me, and I think they can. We've seen some guys develop. We saw Kevin Kopps last year. Patrick Wicklander is a guy that probably doesn't get near enough love for what he did in SEC play. They've got guys that can develop like that and be good to where this team will be a national championship contending team.